And now it's time for a preview of an upcoming game by Tom Vasel.
Hey folks, today we're taking a look at Ars Victor. There's a preview of a game, a two-player board game, and the advertising thing is it's the two-player war game in an hour or less. And I can certainly say that that is true. It is a light war game in which you are kind of fighting in kind of a future fantasy type realm. Let me show you how the game works. As I say in all my previews, remember that it is quite possible that things will change as the Kickstarter goes. This is actually a pretty good looking prototype that I have here, but there might be some changes in the final product. Now, what players are going to do at the beginning of each round is you can use one of the missions in the book to build kind of a pre-programmed area, or you can just build one yourself. Each player taking part, putting these tiles together to forming the battleground area that you see here that's made up of different hexes. Once you do that, you're going to be placing these hexes in the center of each of the three boards in the middle row. There's different hexes and each of these has different terrain, and essentially what you're doing with those is you're giving yourself spots and counter spots that you are going to go to, trying to hold those spots so that other players you will subtract from the enemy's victory points. Which brings up a really interesting facet of this game. Each player is going to secretly build their army. And you can see here that this piece here, and there's a lot of stats on these pieces, but right now we're just looking at this yellow number down there, and that shows 4. And this jump troop here would cost 7. And these lancers here would cost 4, while these scavengers would cost 3, and this field gun would cost 10. Players have 80 points with which to build their army. But they're not going to use all those points to build their army. Let's say they use 60 points to build their army. That means they then have 20 victory points that they will start the game with. As the game progresses, as they lose units, they will lose victory points. If they do not hold objectives, they will lose victory points. And the first person to lose all their points is the loser. So you can take fewer units and start with a higher victory point total, maybe at 45, but then of course you have fewer units on the board. So each player is going to build an army based on with these units. Now let's take a closer look at these units. Each unit has a name and has that cost for it. The big number in the red shield is their hit points, how many points they can take before dying. Then it shows 2 different attacks. The top attack is the attack that they would use in hand-to-hand combat. So for example, the scavengers would use 3 red dice. In this game, there are 3 types of dice: red, white, and blue. White are the weakest dice, red are the second weakest, and blue are the strongest. So you can see here that these heavy troopers roll 2 reds and a blue in hand-to-hand combat, and then they have a ranged attack which can go from 2 to 4 away. In this game, you can't use ranged attack against someone who's next to you. You have to use your hand attack. Their range attack, which can go from 2 to 4 hexes away, is 2 blue and a red. Then there's also possibly special abilities. Scavengers aren't not hindered by terrain when they move through it, and when they fight hand-to-hand in hindering terrain, it doesn't affect them like it would affect other players. The heavy units here have some special abilities where if they take a hit, they can actually retreat instead of taking a hit, or they can stand their ground when they're forced to retreat, take an extra hit instead of retreating. So the game is going to work around all these different units attacking each other. And before I show you more about the game, let's just show you some more of the units. We have conscripts, which are weak attack. We have the super powerful assault trooper. They're very expensive at 10, but they have a lot of, they're very strong at attacking. And they also are shielded, which means that when they get, there's 2 different kinds of hits. There's blue and white. When they get hit with white attacks, they don't do damage unless there's 2 of them. So anybody who's shielded will have that more powerful attack. Then we have mortars, which can shoot over terrain or things that are in the way of them. And then there's the heavy units. Here's the light units that you can attack with. Lancers. Now another thing I want to talk about with these pieces, you'll notice here that there's triangles next to them. Those are movement. When you decide to move a piece, you can move it the number of green triangles that it shows, and then you can move it another yellow triangle, which counts as basically running. So you can move and attack, or you can move and run, basically. So the light can move 1 and attack, or they can move 2 and not attack, while the Lancers can move 3 and attack. And then we have these jump units, which can jump over other people. And we have the very powerful Brutes, which are the strongest units in the game, but they only have a hand-to-hand attack. And then the field gun, which is a very powerful gun. And let's see, so then there's cavalry, and medium troops that are in the game. So there's many different troops that you can pick from to play in the game. You notice that both sides are using the same troops. So how do we differentiate that? Well, one player is red and the other person is blue. Each troop that you take, you are going to put so that that troop has a suit. For example, this one here has clubs, and here's a spot where you can take their hit points as they are damaged. And you then place these units on the first or second level of your board, although a few units have a special ability where they can be inserted into the middle of the board. One of your units is going to be your headquarters. You'll place it on top of this. If that unit's on the board and your opponent's headquarters isn't, they lose a point each turn. And so, you know, destroying your opponent's headquarters and keeping yours alive can be a pretty big deal. But every unit is going to be placed on these, and you get to decide when you put out the units which of the suits you're going to have. And that matters for order's sake. Each player has a deck of cards, and these cards are from 2 to 7 in the 4 different suits. On your turn, you'll have 5 cards, and you will pick one card and play that card. That is how many commands you have. So if I play this one, I have 5 commands, and I played a spade card. So to move a unit that is spades, I will pay 1 to move it. I will pay 2 to move it and attack with it. I can also move clubs, since they're the same color, but that costs me an extra order to move them. So I have 5, so to move a clubs unit would cost 2, and to move an attack with a clubs unit would cost 3. I can also spend points to bring new spades or clubs, paying for them of course, to come onto the board. Because you start with 4 on the board, but you will probably have more units than that, and you'll be able to bring them onto the board in different ways. If I play the card here, that is 5 spades, I cannot use it to move or attack with any of my red units, hearts and diamonds. And so you have to keep an eye on which of these to move. So you're going to basically play a card, move and attack with the different pieces, blowing up your enemies and shooting at them and such. And the game has, like I said, the dice. There's different sides on them. They're hits. Some units are not only affected by the ones that have this yellow background on them. If you roll this, you force your opponent to retreat. The different terrain has different effects. If you're fighting hand-to-hand combat with somebody in like trees and towns, you only get to roll half your dice, unless of course you have a special ability that ignores that. If you're shooting at people in those, all your dice automatically change to white. Some of the terrain is blocking, and you have to take into effect different people's special abilities. When you destroy a unit, that person will lose points equal to the cost of that unit. So for example here, the cavalry, if I destroy them, that player will lose 7 points. Also at the beginning of your turn, if you control any of these 3 central points in the board, for each one you control, your opponent loses 2 points. First person to make the other person to lose all their points is the winner of the game. However, the game could also end because both players have gone through their decks. There's no reshuffling. At that point, whoever has more victory points is the winner. Ars Victor is a very easy game to play. At first, you're going to take a while to figure out what the special abilities on the different units have, but there's a very nice reference sheet that explains each of the things, each of the abilities, what the terrain does, which terrains block. You don't need to figure things out, and after a while you understand that. But the game has 2 very unique features that I haven't seen in other games. One is the army build, where you basically build your army and then have victory points left over. You can leave yourself a ton of victory points, but then your army is smaller. But you can take a huge army, and that could be quite foolish because your opponent can make some small surgical strikes, destroy enough of you to get rid of your small amount of victory points. And having those central hexes that players are battling over forces you not to just sit back and defend. You need to get forward and control those and take out your opponent as much as possible. The game has lots of sample builds. I've played with all the different units, and I have some I like more than others, but I mean, at the same time, the ones that I usually like more are the ones that cost more. So will I have an army of conscripts that I move across the board, or is it better to have fewer, smaller, more powerful units? Only time will tell that. The other thing is that neat mechanic where players, each unit is a suit. So you really got to kind of spread your units out, have 1/4 be hearts, 1/4 diamonds, 1/4 clubs, 1/4 spades if you want, but which one's which? And which ones do you want to work in conjunction with each other? If I always want these 2 units to move at the same time, I'll make them both hearts, for example. but I also only have so many hearts cards in my deck. Each deck only has, like I said, 2 to 7th for each suit, so I have to I can't just make my whole army hearts because I won't be able to use them half the time with half the cards. So anyway, all that works together and the game plays very quickly since there isn't a huge amount of victory points, and since you're going to control those center hexes and the points are going to be going down. I mean, I'm having a hard time imagining the game will end often with the decks running out, instead making someone else run out of points. If you're interested in this light 2-player game with the pretty cool artwork and the sci-fi theme, in just a minute we're going to show you a link to it where you can support it on Kickstarter, Ars Victor.
Thanks for watching our review today. For more information about board games, as well as the #1 board game audio podcast, check out Dicetower.com for reviews, interviews, and more. I'm Eric Summerer, and you've been watching The Dice Tower.